Hello and welcome to the final part of Project Dracunalisis, Chapter 27. Let us begin to end. Anyway, so we start off with Mina's journal. There's lots of exciting things in this chapter. It's a very good chapter. So the horses seem to know that they are being kindly treated, for they go willingly their full stage at best speed. Presumably it's because they're all goodies and the horses are attuned to their goodness, and the side of nature is forces of nature are with them. So that's probably my best explanation of that. Then we have where they stopped at the first house. Oh dear. Stoker reminds us of the superstitious locals in the earliest part of the novel, in chapter 1, when Hark was on his way to the castle, but this time, because she's being vampirized, when the woman who served us saw the scar on my forehead, she crossed herself and put 2 fingers towards me to keep off the evil eye. So she's being treated as a tainted near vampire, effectively. I believe they went to the trouble of putting an extra amount of garlic into our food, and I can't abide garlic. Was that before or after being partially vampirized? Which I don't think is a word, as we've said before. So they're in pursuit of Dracula still, as we'd had established in previous chapters. And again, the hypnosis continues, even though this is actually getting weaker as a technique, we find out as well. So I know Dracula's being moved across the river. We have more religious references where Mina is worried about being unclean in the eyes of God because she's tainted by Dracula's vampirism. And we've said again, like, there's an analogue here for STIs as well. We get rarer commentary, isn't it, in the novel from Van Helsing, but here's a memo designed for his old friend John Seward, in case I may not see him. So we get some detail here about it's cold. So we have pathetic fallacy with the grey sky full of snow. And we have, at sunset I tried to hypnotize her, but alas, with no effect. The power has grown less and less with each day, and tonight it failed me altogether. That sound effect probably doesn't add to the drama, but yeah, he can't really use it now to track Dracula. He tries his best, but it's getting weaker and weaker. He knows it won't work, so he gets a little bit of information, but it gets shorter and more limited. Darkness and swing of water. Then we have Mina looking quite awake, because when the sun goes down, obviously because she's becoming closer to becoming a vampire. So Stoker here adds lots more dramatic tension, but she's getting closer to becoming a vampire. So that's why she gets more awake and seems a bit better at night time, because she's got more energy at night time, because she's becoming a creature of the night. There's a weird bit where she says she doesn't want to eat normal food. So again, more clues that she's becoming more like a vampire. She was so hungry she would not wait. I like it not, and I have grave doubts. So unlike earlier on in the novel where characters seem to miss these warning signs, you've got Van Helsing fully aware here that she's becoming more vampire-like as time goes on. He does this thing where he goes to sleep and then he wakes up and finds her quiet but awake, looking at me with so bright eyes. That would definitely creep you out, wouldn't it, really? So there's horror and tension there as well, and fear and suspense is being created. Madam's still sleeping. She's looking to sleep more healthy and more redder than before, and I like it not. That really needs the voice. Madam's still asleep, and she look in her sleep more healthy and more redder than before, and I like it not. And I am afraid. I'm afraid of all things, even to think, but I must go on my way. The stake we play for is for life and death, or more than these, and we must not flinch. So we have stuff presenting us with Van Helsing. If Van Helsing is scared, then we should be scared. Mina is becoming closer to becoming a vampire. I could not waken her, even for food. I began to fear that the fatal spell of the place was upon her, tainted as she is with that vampire baptism. So, yeah, so really just reiterating what I said before, really. He draws a circle of protection on the ground, like a holy circle. So over the ring are past some other wafers, so we can use this as a sort of spiritual force field, effectively. She sat still all the time, so still as one dead. And again, that's evocative of her being a vampire, suggesting her ever closer steps to becoming a vampire as well. Now, interestingly, we have a reappearance of some characters coming here because it is lightly built up straight away. It's not kind of sudden, but it's quite subtle. Lightly built up, that's a weird way of saying it. Yeah, so I meant to say it's more subtly built up, but it seemed as though the snow flurries and the wreaths of mist took shape as of women with trailing garments. So notice the verbs here about perception. Took the shape as of women with trailing garments. So the simile we've got, oh yeah, okay, who's this going to be? The horses whinnied and cowered as if in terror of the worst. So Stoker's really building up the suspense. Look at the lexical choices here. The snowflakes, they're not that kind of snowflake, but the normal snowflakes, the weather snowflakes. Mist began to wheel and circle around till I could get through a sandy glimpse of those women that would have kissed him. So it is the sexy vampire ladies, also known as Dracula's brides, more officially, are appearing again. I feared for my dear Mina when these weird figures drew near and circled round. Mina's behaviour here, she actually is becoming more like one of the sexy vampire ladies. None safer in all the world from them than I am. And then as I wondered at the meaning of words, a puff of wind made the flame leap up and I see the red scar on her forehead. Well, yeah, she doesn't really need to fear the sexy vampire ladies because she is becoming one of them as well. Keeping ever without the holy circle. Yeah, so the wheeling figures of mist and snow came closer, but keeping ever without the holy circle. Then they began to materialise till, if God not have taken away the reason, for I saw it through my eyes, they were before me in actual flesh, the same three women that Jonathan saw in the room when they would have kissed his throat. I'm forgetting to do the voice. I knew the swaying round forms, the bright hard eyes, the white teeth, the ruddy colour, the voluptuous lips. So all of that is deliberately, that's an anaphoric reference back to Jonathan Harker's description of the brides of Dracula earlier on in the novel. And even the language here, look at the lexical choices here, this is actually the same kind of phrase, the intolerable sweetness of the water glasses. So it could be that it's because Van Helsing has read obviously Jonathan Harker's account and the same language has crept into his mind. That's a sort of within the universe, an in-universe explanation, but what we're more interested in is the real universe explanation, like the real world explanation of Stoker is deliberately connecting back. He's making an anaphoric reference back to those earlier sequences when Jonathan Harker encountered the brides. Come, sister, come to us. Come, come. And again, I've got to be careful on YouTube, but yes, there will be some sexual connotations, I believe, here as well. And that opens up a whole can of worms, which I better not talk about on the video. But anyway, you can join the dots yourself. I'm sure you can. Or not, as the case may be. Or as you prefer. He's also got his wafers that he's very fond of using that are very effective at their low, horrid laugh. So again, we've got this sense of menace from the brides of Dracula as well. Mina can't get out of the protective circle and the brides cannot get into the circle. They can't, neither of those can cross it from either side. At the first coming of the dawn, the horrid figures melted in the whirling mist and snow. The wreaths of transparent gloom moved away towards the castle and were lost. So when the sun comes up, they go. They last all night. They manage to defend against them and off they go. Again, I had to highlight this because Van Helsing just seems to be obsessed with breakfast. Not a bad thing to be obsessed with. I understand that completely. But I will strengthen me with breakfast. And then I will to my terrible work. So sun's up. He's going to go and kill some vampires. Very exciting. There was an accident to the little steamboat that Jonathan Harker and Lord Godalming were on, so that's why it couldn't keep up properly with Dracula. It should have it should have caught up because it should have been a faster ship, but it had taken damage, so it's slowed down. That was mentioned in an earlier chapter, but I've probably overlooked the point. But I do remember reading it, and you hopefully remember reading that too. It's not a big point, but we know it here anyway. So we get lots of, all the characters are getting a bit of a say here, aren't we? Well, not all of the characters, but we're getting very short journal entries deliberately in the epistolary form, which is helping to increase the pace of what we're reading as well. Remember in the last chapter, so it's the denouement, the final unravelling of the plot. We get everything all drawn together and everything finished. We get finality here, don't we? I hear the howling of wolves, so again that evokes the early chapters of it. The snow, pathetic fallacy there as well. And a sense of danger and predators. Back to Van Helsing as well. So this bit's excellent because this is when Van Helsing breaks into Castle Dracula and he kills the brides of Dracula as well. It's very good. So we can hear the wolves in the distance, so that's obviously creates fear and horror. He also, I didn't highlight this bit, there's a good bit here where he has to weigh up thinking, well, Mina is vulnerable to wolves, but actually that's probably better that she's killed by a wolf than become a vampire. So it's a very tough decision that Van Helsing has to make there. So that's quite an interesting bit. That's what he says, yeah, oh, actually, I know I did highlight it. The more of the wolf were better to rest in than the grave of the vampire. So I made my choice to go on with my work. So he finds the 3 graves. He knows there's 3 vampires. He knows there's 3 graves. And he finds the first one, and he finds, again, look at the language, it definitely recalls those early descriptions, so the voluptuous beauty, full of life. So again, there's this deliberate juxtaposition of fear, horror, and sex, or allure, as how we can put it, really. And he also has, I doubt not, that in old time, when such things were, many a man who set forth to do such a task as mine found at the last his heart fail him, and then his nerve. Basically, like many men in the past who would kill these kind of vampires, if it was a attractive female vampire, he'd find himself unable to do it because there's a kind of hypnotic effect as well from the beauty of the vampire. So he'd delay and delay and delay till the mere beauty and the fascination of the wanton undead have hypnotised him, and he remain on till sunset come, and the vampire's sleep be over. Then the beautiful eyes of the fair woman open and look love, and the voluptuous mouth present to a kiss, and man is weak. And there remain one more victim in the vampire fold, one more to swell the grim and grisly ranks of the undead. So you can see there's definitely sexual symbolism here about temptation as well. You can expand it further and think about ideas about misogyny as well, like linking sexually transmitted infections to blaming women, because there's a long history of that. I mean, you're looking kind of like 19th century literature and 19th century culture, you'll see a lot of that. So there's all these kind of things. Then we have, in the distance, you can hear snowstorm there, a long low wail so full of woe and pity that it woke me like the sound of a clarion, for it was the voice of my dear Madam Mina that I heard. She could be in danger from a wolf or something, or it could be some kind of trick connected to what he's doing. It's not actually completely clear, but he goes through each of the graves, finds each of the sisters, and he finds he's got the 2 dark-haired one, the 1 blonde one, he's found that as well. She was so fair to look on, so radiantly beautiful, so exquisitely voluptuous, that the very instinct of man in me, which calls some of my sex to love and to protect one of hers, made my head whirl with new emotion. So he does seem to find her attractive, but it seems to be more of a kind of parental instinct to protect her here is what seems to be manifesting in Van Helsing, or so he says. But anyway, and he finds the tomb itself of Dracula. So he also puts some wafer in that, so Dracula can't rest there. Bad luck, Dracky. And now he goes to each of, you got a little short, minor exclamatory sentence there, but 3, he's got to do this. I had to do this for Lucy earlier on. Now he's got to do it 3 times, even though they didn't actually know. He doesn't know these 3 vampire ladies, but these ones are much older. They're centuries older. They're more powerful. It's described here, "Oh, my friend John, but it was butcher work. Had I not been nerved by thoughts of other dead and of the living over whom hung such a pall of fear, I could not have gone on. I tremble and tremble even yet, though till all was over, God be thanked, my nerve did stand. Had I not seen the repose in the first place and the gladness that stole over it just ere the final dissolution came as realization that the soul had been won, I could not have gone further with my butchery." So because he sees that his cure, if that's the right word, or treatment of vampirism is successful, it looks like it's working, it spurs him on to do it. But it's described as butchery, and obviously that's got connotations of like dehumanization, isn't it, and animal connotations and objectification. "I could not have enjoyed the horrid screeching as the stake drove home." We said about stake stuff, didn't we, earlier on? Plunging of writhing form. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can fill in the dots. Fill in the dots. Connect the dots. Lips of bloody foam. Okay, so we've said a lot about this earlier on, don't we? So we've said a lot about this. So I will move on. Okay. Then we have. He cuts the head off, and then they crumble, which is probably the way that people got the idea of the sunlight and the vampires crumbling, but they don't do that. At least not in this novel. So that's one of those things. But when he does his, he does his thing with the vampires, once he's put the stake in, cut the heads off, then the curse of vampirism is lifted straight away. And then you've got this simile as though the death should have some centuries agone and at last assert himself. Actually, it's also personification. And say at once and loud, "I am here." So it's like as soon as you lift the curse of vampirism, the bodies crumble to dust, like time's catching up with them. So it's a nice image, actually. I say nice image, not a nice image, it's an effective image. And then to create suspense, Stoker's got, and so with trust and hope and yet full of fear, we go eastward to meet our friends and him. Circumlocution fans, as in deliberately not saying his name, who Madam Mina told me that she know are coming to meet us. That's because of her vampiric instinct. So we go to Mina Harker's journal. She could hear the distant howling of wolves. And that recalls vampire ladies, but they've gone now. But the definitely reinforcing the idea of the threat and the danger and the wildness of the country that they're in and the continued threat. So they see, in the distance, they see Dracula's cart being pulled along here. There's a simile there, like a dog's tail wagging. And then the gypsies, the peasants or gypsies, are bringing him in, the ones who worked for him earlier on. "They are racing for the sunshed. We may be too late. God's will be done." So it is a real final race against time. We've got Dracula approaching his castle. We've got the sun is going down. And when the sun goes down, he's going to be more powerful. And then they're going to be in real trouble. So that's it. Even with all the things that have been done, Dracula's going to be a threat if the sun goes down. So Quincey and John are in pursuit. Dr. Seward there as well. All the gang's all here. Lord Godalming. They're all pursuing him. The Winchester rifle there again, which is high-tech, modern technology, repeating rifle. That's for Van Helsing. He's involved as well. They were hiding in a little cave. Was it a small alcove, I think, rather than cave. And Mina gets her revolver out as well. And so she's willing to join the fight too as well. And potentially fight off the wolves. The leader of the gypsies, a splendid looking fellow who sat at his horse like a centaur. Nice simile there. So that gives you connotations of him being a highly skilled horseman. And there's a sense of admiration there as well. Now this bit is when they have the fight. They have the fight with the peasants and the gypsies. And you have, unfortunately, Quincey is injured. I could see that with his left hand he was clutching at his side and that blood was spurting through his fingers. Years ago I had some weird idea that he was stabbed in the hand. I don't know why I thought that. That's just me being a wally when I first read it. I don't know why I thought that. But anyway, what actually happened, he'd been stabbed in the side. That makes more sense, because if he was stabbed in the hand it wouldn't be fatal. I suppose it could be through blood loss, but anyway, I'm deviating, sorry. There's a reference to the cookery knife, which we've said again has symbolism of There's a whole folklore connected to blood about that knife tradition. So yeah, not folklore, more tradition connected to cookery knife. So that's what Jonathan uses to prise off the lid of the coffin as well. Or I should have said that the gypsies all back off, don't they, when they know that they're surrounded. But anyway, oh yeah, sorry, it's here. I get mixed up because I can't remember the order that I read it all in. So covered by the Winchester, at the mercy of Lord Godalming and Dr. Seward had given in and made no resistance. So they kind of give up. They open it up. I saw the Count lying within the box upon the earth, some of which the rude falling from the cart had scattered over him. He was deathly pale, just like a waxen image, and the red eyes glared with a horrible vindictive look which I knew too well. As I looked, the eyes saw the sinking sun, and a look of hate in them turned to triumph. And this is all Mina's account, of course, Mina's perspective here on the whole thing. The instant came the sweep and flash of Jonathan's great knife. Now, symbolically, you could talk about there's lots of things here, good for crossing boundaries, good for gender as well. The fact that he uses his knife to... It says shear through the throat, so presumably that means he uses the cookery knife to cut his head off. I think it's not just slitting his throat. I think it's actually cutting his head off, because it says shear through the throat. But you can say, as you've got a knife here, there's some phallic imagery. You could talk about maybe ideas about Jonathan Harker reasserting his masculinity in front of his wife as well. Him reclaiming his wife. There's lots of symbolism going on here, isn't there? If you think about it, there's some big stuff going on there as well. And added to that, there's also Quincey Morris, who is a real man. He gets his his Bowie knife. Not that Bowie, but his Bowie knife is a type of adventurer's knife, basically. And he plunges it into the heart of Dracula. So they do it at the same time. So that works like a stake. They cut the head off, and then his body crumbles into dust in the way that we see in films when he's exposed to sunlight, except he's not exposed to sunlight. It's because he's had his head cut off and he's had a stake through, well, not a stake, a knife through the heart in this case. And then Dracula, though, in that moment of final dissolution, there was in the face a look of peace, as such I could never have imagined might have rested there. So this is significant. Remember, Dracula, he's effectively under a curse, so there was good in him all along, even though the horrible things he did. Once he was lifting from his curse, there was a look of peace. So he restores to a kind of natural state. But oh dear, poor Quincey, though, there's no saving him. But there's a contrast between a kind of unnatural death and here's a natural, heroic death. That's what Stoker deliberately juxtaposes those two things. The blood still gushing through. It's too late. I'm only too happy to have been of any service. Oh, God, he cried, suddenly struggling up to a sitting posture and pointing to me. It was worth for this to die. Look, look. So the sun comes up and everything, bathed in a rosy light. So you could say there's a suggestion of God, really, an earnest amen. So there's definitely religious connotations coming here as well. Now God be thanked that all has not been in vain. See, the snow is not more stainless than her forehead. The curse has passed away. To our bitter grief, with a smile and in silence, he died, a gallant gentleman. So we said really when Quincey was introduced, didn't we? We talked about how he blends the old world with the new world, in that he's a bit like an old-fashioned knight in some ways, even though he's from the new world of America, and his death is very dramatic and heroic, like an old-fashioned knight in many ways as well. And in true heroic fashion, he got to say his profound last words before actually dying properly. And then it just means we get a flash forward, which is 7 years later. So metaphorically, we all went through the flames, and we think well worth the pain we endured. It's an added joy to me that me and our boy's birthday is the same day as that on which Quincey Morris died. So there's a happy ending for Victorians, is that obviously Jonathan Harker and Mina were already married, but they've had a kid. So they've had a child. That's a win for Victorian readers. But in a nice bit of continuity, they have named their son Quincey, so Quincey Harker. But notice this, look at this. It's an added joy to me and to me that our boy's birthday is the same day as that on which Quincey Morris died. that's the same day that Dracula died. Is there some kind of connection there? Room for a sequel there, isn't there? Definitely. There is actually. There have been sequels based on this. There is one out there. At least one I can think of. Anyway. Interesting, isn't it? If you think about it, maybe there's a little bit of a hidden meaning to that. Anyway, but they called him Quincey. He must be named after all of them. Maybe he's called Quincey, Arthur, Abraham, John, Harker. Maybe they also put Jonathan in there as well, and maybe they named him after Mina as well. That might get a bit confusing, but anyway. Could do. Then we have Godalming and Seward are both happily married. Hooray! For Victorian readers will be pleased about this. But so incidental is the whole thing. We don't know the names of the women, and we don't know who they are. They just happen to be married. That's it. But that's a happy Victorian ending. Then we have Van Helsing summed it all up, as he said, with our boy on his knee. He's obviously become some kind of grandfather figure. But presumably he must be hanging around all the time. Like he just happens to be hearing this note at the end, like 7 years later. Like just has Van Helsing just been hanging around for 7 years, or did he go back to Holland, or has he just reappeared? We don't know. We're not meant to think about it because it doesn't really matter. But he's definitely becoming a sort of grandparent figure here by the look of it, because he's got Quincey Harker sitting on his knee. We want no proofs. We ask none to believe us. This boy will some day know what a brave and gallant woman his mother is. Already he knows her sweetness and loving care. Later on he will understand how some men so loved her that they did dare much for her sake. So that's the closing statement of the novel. The idea, this is Jonathan Harker's actually account, his note at the end of it. But the idea of, it's interesting that we have Stoker emphasise Mina is really the core of the novel, really, when you think about it, when you look at it like that. And particularly as there's a child and new life and everything, and life versus undeath and natural versus unnatural. So ultimately, yeah, maybe after all, when you look back at the whole novel, Mina was really the most important character, and saving her from becoming a vampire was the personal ultimate mission of it. So anyway, that is the end. Can we bear to this moment? We've been on such a journey. If you've managed to listen to every single video, you deserve some kind of prize, like some kind of biscuit or something. Treat yourself to a biscuit. But that really is the end. So thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell. Look at my other videos. I plan on making more videos in the future. Please just enjoy. Just go forth into your life and enjoy. Thank you.